Hey guys, it's Sarah. Welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be 3 Haunted Mansion inspired DIYs, and to my disappointment, I don't own any Haunted Mansion ears. Because every pair I've made them for someone else. So that tutorial might be coming soon. I might have to make another set. If you guys missed them, I have done other Haunted Mansion inspired crafts on my channel. I will have the videos linked down below for anything Haunted Mansion related on my channel if you want to check them out. But this particular tutorial is going to be showing you how I made 3 kind of like decor items that are Haunted Mansion inspired, and they go on my little Haunted Mansion display shelf during the Halloween season. If you want to see how I made these Haunted Mansion inspired DIYs, then just keep watching. So the first craft is going to be making our own Madame Leota out of Dollar Tree products. So you can find these little snow globes, DIY snow globes at Dollar Tree. They're really awesome for a bunch of crafts, but it made me think of Madame Leota. And then you can also find these little practice hair Barbie dolls. I picked the blonde one because I knew that it would be easier to change her hair color with paint, and that was my goal. So first I wanted to check to make sure her head would indeed fit inside, and as long as you squeeze the head enough, you can get it in there. Don't worry, guys. So we're going to be starting with the hair, and I did pull up a reference photo just so that I had something to work off of. This is a little bit messy, so just be prepared for that. But her hair is like teal and purple and blue, and so I'm going to be using kind of a plethora of acrylic paints. All of these are apple barrel paints, and I get them at Walmart for 58 cents. But I'm going to be starting with the teal color all over her face, and then we will extend into her hair. The teal actually covered her face really well, and initially I thought that I was going to have a pretty easy time, like, not painting over her eyes, but it does get a little bit tricky the closer you get. So you're definitely going to need a couple different sizes of paintbrushes just to make sure that you're able to do it. We are going to be ripping that base off of the head, so you can just go ahead and do that now and not have to worry about painting it. I wasn't sure at the time, but I do end up ripping it off. So this is me going in for a second coat of paint once it had dried and just kind of evening out the patchiness. I do kind of wonder if I had sanded it down first, if maybe it would have taken the paint a little bit better, or maybe if I had primed it with a white. I'm not really sure. But overall, it gave it kind of like a spooky stone look because it did have a texture to her skin. And this is what she looked like after 2 coats. I am really sorry I keep going out of the frame, you guys. I promise I'm doing my best. It's just so hard when I'm detail painting. And speaking of detail painting, next we're going to go in and reline her eyes. And I am focusing mostly on the top portion and trying to keep that kind of cat eye quality. This actually was not quite as hard as I thought it was going to be. I was really nervous about repainting in her eye lines, but just take your time and be really patient with yourself. After getting her eyeliner as symmetrical as I possibly could, then I'm going to go in and paint her lips a really bright red color, trying not to get it on where her teeth are. And honestly, guys, I think she's looking pretty good. Like, that's pretty good. So this next part, I guess I was just really brave, and I went in and did her eyebrow with paint. I don't know why I didn't sketch it in with a pencil first like a normal person, but I didn't. And as you can guess, they did not come out looking like sisters. They did, I don't even know that they looked like cousins. So obviously I couldn't do Madame Leota like that, so I did go in and paint over it, and this is the only portion of her skin that really got, like, not the best texture to it, and I know it was because I was just rushing. So definitely take your time, trace in the eyebrows with a pencil first, and then go in and do it with paint. So next we're going to go in and dye her hair with tie-dye. So they do have tie-dye at Dollar Tree, but they won't necessarily have the colors that you need because I've only seen green, blue, and red. So I would just suggest getting a tie-dye pack, or even better, just using your acrylic paint and watering it down, because honestly the tie-dye was so messy. It did stain her skin in some spots. In my head, this was just the best way to dye the hair, it being like an artificial texture, but
that doesn't even make sense because dyes grab better to natural textures. So I don't have a full explanation, but I did do the tie-dye. It did look really, really cool. But after the first rinse, I had to go back in and do a completely second load of tie-dye because it rinsed out almost clear. So this is what it looked like after the first rinse, and you can see it barely grabbed onto the colors. So I did try again, but unfortunately it was not the way to go. If I did this again, I would definitely just take acrylic paint and like add a little bit of water and water the paint down a little bit and just paint her hair. Plus that would make it to where you could structure her hair and make it go into the dome exactly how you want it to. But I did just want to show you guys this because this is where mine got her coloring from. I like how I said, like, that's what I would do, but I do end up painting her hair because I realized that her entire scalp shows through. So using that same color I used on her skin, I am going to go in and paint her scalp because, oh man, homegirl needs some fill in there. So I'm just going to be using that same paint that I used on her skin and just filling in the scalp. You can tell that I'm a little bit rushing this just because I have like other videos I need to film and stuff. But obviously if you're wanting this to be displayed in your home, take your time with it. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I totally forgot that I did paint her hair with acrylic paint because I made this like 2 years ago and I'm just now getting the video out. So as you can see here, I am using acrylic paint to paint her hair and give it the coloring that I want it to have. This worked so much better than the tie-dye, so just skip the tie-dye and go straight to this step. Okay, so like I said, this footage is like years old at this point, so I'm definitely missing a couple of things. I did contour her face with a slightly darker blue color. I'm going to zoom in on it here so you guys can see it, but if I remember correctly, the biggest reason I decided to do that is because the tie-dye dyed her forehead, and so I was trying to make it make sense. But next we're going to be Mod Podging her face just to make sure that the paint does not chip off. So I am using the glossy Mod Podge and I'm just going all over wherever there is paint on her face or the back of her head. Now I do have two ways that you guys can display her, and one is with lights, one is without lights. This is where I ripped off the base of her head because it made her fit a lot better in there. And originally I didn't think I was going to put lights inside of here, or maybe I thought that I could string them in afterward, but it definitely is easiest to kind of like jumble the lights into her hair. Kind of like what I'm doing here. This is the best way that I could get the lights to go into the globe along with the head. Now to get her head back into this globe, it was actually a lot easier to do it with the base on the head because you're able to kind of like wiggle the head around and move it as you please. So I wouldn't rip the base off of the Barbie's head until you're ready to like be done with the project. But once that's done, then you can just close up your snow globe and you have a little light up Madame Leota to display. So for this next project, I'm making a display for my Madame Leota Funko Pop. Now originally I bought this house in a set of 3 from Ross, and it was that wood color on the back. And I've been displaying my Madame Leota inside of it for a couple years now, but I wanted to kind of fancy it up. So using this burgundy color faux velvet fabric that I have on hand, I'm going to be making kind of like a curtain on the front of the house. Now obviously you guys might not have this exact house with you, but this would also work with a shadow box or anything really that is going to give you some depth. So although you might not be able to create the exact same shape, I still think that this is a tutorial that you guys could replicate. So as far as attaching the fabric goes, we are just going to be hot gluing it in place, but I did want to create little pleats in the fabric. So I cut some excess on the fabric to make sure that I had enough to do that. And then when I'm hot gluing it, I'm just going to be doing it a little bit at a time. So I'm taking about 1 inch of the fabric and tapping it down into the glue. And then you do need to allow your glue to dry enough to where it's not going to pull up every time you try to create a pleat. So I used a little bit too much glue the first time, and realizing that I wanted to make the pleats, I'm going to kind of like space them out to make sure I have enough fabric and then glue down the opposite end before going back in and folding the fabric. If you guys have never made pleats, I promise I'm going to make this make sense. But I glued down like the front of the fabric, and now I'm gluing at the next corner. And you can see that I have a huge amount of excess fabric kind of scooping down into the house. And then the portion that goes down toward the bottom of the house is like the bottom panel of the curtain. So in order to create those kind of swoops that I want to, I'm going to glue down the center portion next. And then now I have 2 extra gathers of fabric to create pleats with. So in order to do that, you're going to pinch your fabric and then fold it on top of what you've already glued down. Just like that. And then you're going to repeat this step for the other piece of gathered fabric that you have. So as you can see, I've stood it up and I'm checking it. Like this is kind of tricky to film because obviously I want to see it and make sure that it looks good. But when you guys are doing this in front of you, not trying to film it, it's a lot easier. But yeah, just creating that final pleat in the fabric. And then we will be cutting that down because it does hang down quite a bit too far. But we'll get to that in just a moment. And actually that moment is right now. So I could already tell that the fabric was too long, so I'm just going to go in with my fabric shears and just trim it. I don't have an exact science for this or measurement because obviously it will depend on you, whatever you're using to showcase your little Madame Leota. But I am just going to trim it down, and then whatever like kind of jagged edges I have, I'll go in and trim those up separately. So the side portion is also going to get glued down in place, but before I went on and did that part, I did the mirror side of the pleats. So I now have the whole top portion of the house glued down, and now I'm doing the final edges of the fabric, just folding them over and tapping them down into the glue. And then I want to create kind of like a gather on the edges of the curtain, like the curtains have been parted, so you can see Madame Leota. You guys can see me doing the edge well here. So I do fold over the fabric to create kind of like a false hemline and then tap it down into the glue. I have this gold rope trim on hand, and I'm just going to be using that to create like a little, I don't know what you call those things. The things that like keep curtains from closing, like the little ropes. But that's what I'm going to be creating on both sides. Now this trim unravels like crazy once you cut it, so you do have to work kind of quickly and definitely keep a lighter on hand to burn the edges. But I also like to do a little extra reinforcement with some hot glue, so I just do a little ring of hot glue around it, and that just kind of helps hold it in place while I'm working with it. Now in order to part the fake curtains, I am gathering them with my fingers first, and then I am going to tack them down with some hot glue. This just makes it a little bit easier as I'm trying to add that rope in place as well, but I'll be honest, the rope is 100% what is holding it really well in place. So I am just doing a hot glue dot inside of the little house and then wrapping this golden rope to the outside, and then I will glue it down on the outside as well. But you can see how much excess rope I have there because it's so much easier to glue it in place and then cut off your excess and not have to worry about it unraveling while you're working. I'm so sorry I'm out of frame, you guys. I did stay in frame a little bit better for this side, but unfortunately my camera cut out. So we're back to this side. I'm so sorry, guys. Once I had it totally glued down, I just took my lighter and kind of burned the edges to make sure that they would not fray. Next, we're going to be using a different type of gold trim on the sides to cover up the glue. I am cutting down the curtains at this point to the height of the house just so that they're not ultra gathered up. The gold trim we'll be using, I don't know what kind of trim this is. It's got like little loopies on the sides of it, and it is gold as well. I like the 2 different tones of gold for this particular piece, and then this helps us hide kind of like the messy glue edges that inevitably will show between fabric and wood. So I'm just adding a thin line of hot glue and then tapping down my trim into the glue to finish off the edges. I am taking this trim all the way across the top and then back down the bottom to give it a really nice finished edge. Next, I thought it would be fun to add these little miniature ornaments. They're like little gold instruments. I honestly did not get the right pack. I thought that this pack came with a drum as well, but I guess it didn't. It only came with 4 instruments. So they're a little bit too bright gold, so we're going to be dulling these down just using some truffle brown chalk paint. You could definitely use acrylic paint for this as well, but I'm just using a scratchy sparse brush and just dry brushing this all over in order to give them a little bit more of a worn and dingy look, and I am going to be doing this to all of the instruments. In order to hang these in the house, I am going to be adding some jewelry, invisible line or fishing line, whatever you have on hand, to hang them. So I'm just going to loop those through the little open spaces on the instrument in order to hang these up inside of the little house. I would honestly suggest doing this before doing the curtain, just because it's a little bit easier to glue it down into the house and not have to worry about the curtain being in your way. But it didn't cause me a whole bunch of issues. I'm just saying if you're starting from scratch, maybe do this portion first. So as you can see here, I've got them all kind of fishing lined up, and then I'm going to put in my Madame Leota for height reference because I obviously don't want them like smacking her in the face. And so I will then just go ahead and glue these to the ceiling of the house. And that is the final step in creating this little, I don't even know what you'd call it, little home for Madame Leota. For the next DIY, I picked up this sign in the super on sale clearance section of Hobby Lobby a couple years ago and painted it black and then never did anything with it. So I'm going to be turning this into a Haunted Mansion sign. This will work with any sign, but what I loved about this one in particular was these little scroll details on the side. The black really like made them invisible, so I'm going in with this really light blue metallic paint from Walmart and using a dry brush. It's again really sparse and scratchy. I'm just going to very gently be painting this all over the scroll portion to make it really pop on this black background. For the wording on the sign, I am going to be cutting out a stencil. Now, initially I did this and I was so dumb, I forgot I wanted to stencil it, so I just peeled my stencil off. You guys just watched me do it. I just peeled it off and now it's not even usable. And then I started weeding pointlessly. So after realizing my grave mistake, I recut the stencil and then weeded the actual letters out. And then once I had all of the letters weeded out, I was able to peel the stencil off and apply it to my project in order to use it to paint. Now I just did this using normal old transfer tape. I just picked up the stencil and then laid it down on my sign. It was pretty easy to center those little scrolls, made it a little bit easier on me. And then once I had it applied, I just used my squeegee to make sure it adhered really nicely, but not too much because I do have to peel it up in just a minute. And then just to be safe, I am adding some washi tape around the edges because I don't want to get paint places that I don't want it. After applying the washi tape, then I'm going to take that exact same light blue metallic perfect Haunted Mansion color paint, and using a sponge brush, I am just going to gently tap the paint down all over the stencil. I like to peel my stencils up while the paint is still wet. I feel like it gives me a little bit of a nicer removal, even though it's not easy to do. I just feel like the paint doesn't bleed and I don't have to worry about quite as much mess. After allowing the metallic paint to dry, I'm just going in with a little bit of that black chalk paint that I have on hand and touching up any place that the paint might have gotten that I didn't want it. I really like how this sign came out. I think that it's just the right amount of subtle, perfect for the Halloween season.
Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did make it all the way to the end of this video, then please leave a ghost emoji in the comments for me just so that I know you made it all the way through. If you are new to my channel, please consider subscribing. It is a great way of supporting my channel and continuing to help me put out content for you guys. And I really appreciate it when you guys subscribe, like, and comment. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in my next one. Bye.